It's 11:30 a.m., and I've been sitting in this plastic chair for 3 hours, watching two IRS auditors go through every piece of paper I've touched in 35 years. One is young, maybe 30, with glasses and a folder full of colorful sticky notes. The other is older, probably in his 50s, and has that look people get when they've seen everything. While they flip through invoices from 2018, I try to stay calm, but my hands are sweating. Not because I did anything illegal, but because I know exactly what they're going to find. And I know that what they're going to find could either send me straight to prison or make me the most valuable employee at Henderson Distribution. It all started 6 months ago, when my boss called me an old fool at the company Christmas party. Now, as the young auditor writes something in his notebook, I wonder if everything I did after that was worth it. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Robert Maldonado. I'm 62 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought my biggest problem was making my money last until the end of the month. I've worked as an accountant at Henderson Distribution since I was 27. The company started as a small grocery wholesaler in Newark, and now it's one of the biggest distributors in the tri-state area. Bob, please. We need help. They laid Michael off again. Michael is my son. He's 38, has a business degree, and has been jumping from job to job for 2 years. The economy doesn't spare anyone, but it seems to have us middle-aged folks in its crosshairs. Tell Michael to come over Sunday. We'll talk. I hung up and stared at the ceiling. In my nightstand drawer, I had $12,000, what was left of my savings after lending money to Michael the last 5 times. My Social Security is a joke, $800 a month, that doesn't even cover my blood pressure medication. The only thing keeping us afloat is my salary at the distribution company. How much are we giving him this time? Martha, my wife, asked without turning over in bed. I don't know if we have anything to give. Robert, he's our son. That silence was one we knew well. It was the same one that appeared every time we had to choose between helping Michael or paying our own bills. I got to the office that morning with a strange feeling in my stomach. The company had changed a lot in recent months. The new general manager, Sebastian Rivera, had come from Chicago with an MBA and big plans to modernize operations. The older employees had started to feel like we were in the way. Robert, Mr. Rivera wants to see you in his office. Linda, the secretary, told me as soon as she saw me come in. She had that look she gets when she's bringing bad news. I poured myself coffee from the machine I had personally arranged to buy in 1997, when the company still fit in half a building, and old man Henderson still came in every day to make sure nothing was missing from the warehouse. Come in, Robert. Have a seat, please. Robert, I'm going to be frank with you. The company is going through a very important transformation. We need to optimize resources, streamline processes, digitize operations. Your work is highly valued, obviously. No one questions your experience, but the reality is that we need a more agile profile. Someone who understands new digital tools, who can work with artificial intelligence, who adapts to current pace. Are you firing me, Sebastian? No, not at all. I'm offering you an orderly transition toward retirement, with a very generous severance package, of course, and the possibility of doing some consulting if we need your historical knowledge of the company. I felt something collapse inside me. It wasn't a surprise, but it hurt just the same. When? Exactly. Obviously, he'll need your help at first, but he's very smart. He graduated summa cum laude. I stayed quiet. Patrick is 24 years old, lives with his parents, doesn't have children to support, doesn't know the difference between a 1099 and a W-2, and thinks payroll taxes calculate themselves. Robert, I know it's difficult, but it's best for everyone. For you too. You'll be able to enjoy more time with your family, rest, do the things you always wanted to do. But I didn't say any of that. I nodded, got up, and left the office. The rest of the day was a nightmare. Every time a coworker looked at me, I wondered if they already knew. Linda avoided my eyes. The younger employees seemed more cheerful than usual, as if something had changed for the better. At 6 in the evening, I stayed alone in the office. I opened my computer and started reviewing files, not because I had pending work, but because I needed to understand what exactly I was losing. Henderson Distribution handles distribution for over 300 consumer brands. I know every client, every supplier, every route. I know the real margins, the under-the-table deals, the undeclared commissions, the special discounts given based on season or volume. Most importantly, I know the numbers that don't appear in the official financial statements. For 3 hours I reviewed files I hadn't opened in years, invoices for consulting that was never provided, entertainment expenses that included family vacations for previous managers, commissions paid to shell companies. Nothing illegal, technically, but irregularities that could cause serious problems if someone reviewed them carefully. And then I realized something. Patrick, the 24-year-old accountant with the summa cum laude degree, had no idea these irregularities existed. Sebastian, with all his experience in Chicago, didn't either. They saw clean numbers in spreadsheets, but didn't know the story behind each number. I sat in the darkness of the office. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about Michael's problems, or my disappearing savings, or the humiliation of being considered obsolete. I was thinking about something much more interesting: how much real power someone has when they know all the secrets of a company. That Sunday, Michael came to the house with red eyes and a folder full of resumes he'd been distributing throughout the metropolitan area. His kids, Bobby Jr., 8 years old, and Maria, 6, ran to hug me as if nothing had happened, but I could see in their little faces that shadow that appears when children sense something's wrong at home. "Dad, I don't know what else to do," Michael told me while the kids played in the backyard. "They tell me I'm overqualified for some jobs, and that I lack technology experience for others. I'm 38 years old, Dad. I'm neither young nor old. I'm in the worst possible place." I looked at my son and saw my own future, a capable, intelligent, responsible man who couldn't find work because the job market had become a machine for discarding people. The difference was that Michael was 38 and had time to start over. I was 62, and they were pushing me toward the exit. "Michael, I need to tell you something." I explained the situation at the company, Sebastian's proposal, the severance they had offered me. Michael listened in silence, and when I finished talking, he broke down. "Dad, if you lose your job, we're all going broke. Your severance will go to pay my debts and what you've lent me, and after that, what do we do?" That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up at 3 in the morning, made coffee, and sat in the kitchen to think. In 35 years of work, I had never used my knowledge of the company for personal benefit. I had never threatened anyone, never blackmailed anyone, never even hinted that I knew things I shouldn't know. But now everything was different. It wasn't just my job that was at stake. It was my family's survival. Monday, I arrived at the office with a decision made. I wasn't going to accept the orderly transition toward retirement. I was going to fight, and I had the weapons to do it. The first thing I did was ask Sebastian for a private meeting. "Sebastian, I've been thinking about our conversation on Friday. I have some concerns about how we're going to handle the transition." "Perfect, Robert. I'm glad you're taking this with such a positive attitude." "Well, that's what the transition period is for. You're going to teach Patrick everything." "Sure, but there are more complicated things. For example, there are some arrangements with suppliers that are handled very specifically, and there are certain operations that, let's say, require very deep knowledge of U.S. tax legislation." I paused and looked directly at him. Operations that could be compromised if not handled with proper care. Sebastian frowned. What exactly are you referring to, Robert? Well, there are things that are better explained with documentation. How about I prepare a detailed report of all the special operations the company handles? That way you can better evaluate how you want the transition to be. Great, perfect. Have it ready for next week. I left that meeting with the first part of my plan in motion. Sebastian had taken the bait without realizing it. During the following days, I worked like never before in my life. I compiled 35 years of irregularities, questionable procedures, under-the-table arrangements, and operations that, while not illegal, could cause serious problems if audited by the IRS or reviewed by external investors. But I also did something else. I started documenting everything I knew about the company's future plans, conversations I had heard, emails I had seen, meetings I had attended. Sebastian had made the mistake of underestimating me, but not of excluding me from sensitive information. Friday afternoon, I delivered a 250-page report to Sebastian. Here's everything you need to know about the company's special operations, I told him with a smile. I think you'll find very valuable information. Robert, this is a lot of material. Can't you make an executive summary? Sebastian, you asked me to prepare everything for the transition. This is everything. Every operation is explained in detail, with all corresponding legal and fiscal implications. Well, I'll review it over the weekend. I left the office that Friday with the feeling of having set something irreversible in motion. I didn't know exactly how everything was going to end, but I knew I was no longer the helpless victim they thought I was. Monday morning, Sebastian was waiting for me in his office. He had dark circles under his eyes and looked like he'd had a very difficult weekend. Robert, we need to talk. Sure, Sebastian. What did you think of the report? The report is complex. There are some things I don't understand well, and there are others that worry me. What things worry you? Sebastian was quiet for a long time. Robert, some of the operations you describe here, are they legal? They're the operations that previous managers authorized. I just recorded them. Why are you asking if they're legal? Do you think there's something irregular? No, it's not that. It's just, they're very complex, and some have fiscal implications that require a lot of care. I smiled. The same small smile I had perfected during 35 years. Exactly. That's why I was telling you, the transition was going to be complicated. These operations require a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge of context. It's not something you can learn in a training course. And what do you propose? Well, I think the most prudent thing would be for me to stay a while longer, at least until we have everything well documented and regularized. We wouldn't want to have any problems with an external audit, would we? Sebastian nodded slowly. I could see in his eyes the exact moment when he understood that the old fool had just become the most important person in the company. How long are you thinking? Well, at least a year. Maybe 2. It depends on how quickly we want to regularize everything. And the severance? What severance? I'm not leaving, Sebastian. I'm staying to work. During the following weeks, the dynamics in the office changed completely. Sebastian, who had arrived with plans for total renovation, now consulted every important decision with me. Patrick, the young accountant, had gone from being my replacement to being my assistant. And I, who had been about to be pushed toward retirement, now had more real authority than ever in 35 years. But the problems at home remained the same. Michael had gotten a temporary job at another distributor, but the salary was half of what he earned before. Martha's medications had gone up 40% in 3 months, and I, despite having saved my job, knew my situation was still fragile. One night, while we were having dinner, Martha asked me the question I was expecting. Robert, what did you do at the company? Sebastian treats you differently now. How? I told her the whole story, the documentation I had compiled, the irregularities I had discovered, the way I had managed to turn the situation around. Martha listened in silence, and when I finished talking, she thought for a long time. And what's going to happen now? Now I'm going to keep working, with more authority than before, and with the security that they can't fire me easily. Robert, aren't you doing something dangerous? But I knew Martha was right. What I had done was walk a tightrope. I had used sensitive information to protect my position, and that could have unpredictable consequences. The consequences came 2 months later, in the most unexpected way possible. Mr. Robert Maldonado, we're from the audit division. We need to review some aspects of the company's accounting. I felt my blood freeze. For 35 years, I had managed the company's accounts without the IRS ever showing up, and right now, when I had documented all the historical irregularities, an external audit arrived. The auditors set up in an office and started requesting documentation. I had to give them the same files I had used to pressure Sebastian, but this time on the other side, there wasn't a young, inexperienced manager. There were IRS professionals with decades of experience in detecting irregularities. And now I'm here, in this plastic chair, watching them review my decades of work and wondering if everything I did was worth it. The older auditor looks up from the papers and stares at me. Mr. Maldonado, we found some inconsistencies in the accounting records. Nothing indicating fraud, but operations that require clarification. I nod. I know exactly which operations those are. We were struck by the fact that you documented all these irregularities so thoroughly. It's uncommon for an accountant to compile this type of historical information with such care. Well, the new manager asked me to prepare a complete report to facilitate the generational transition in the company. Yes, they were going to retire me, but in the end we decided it was better for me to stay to regularize some pending issues. Mr. Maldonado, would you be willing to collaborate with us to completely regularize the company's situation? Of course, I've always been willing to collaborate. I leave that meeting with a strange feeling. On one hand, I've avoided any type of personal sanction. On the other hand, I've just become responsible for implementing the most complete regularization the company has had in decades. I take out my cell phone and dial Michael's number. Son, I have a proposal for you. Tell me, Dad. The company is going to need an administrative coordinator to supervise the accounting regularization process. Someone young, with university training, who can work directly with me for the next 2 years. Are you offering me a job at your company? I'm offering you the possibility of learning everything I know about this company and having stable work while the regularization process lasts. There's a long silence on the other end of the phone. Michael, during the last few months, I learned something very important, that in this life, you can spend years being underestimated by people who don't understand the value of experience. But when the moment comes to show what you're worth, it's better to be prepared. And are you prepared? I look out the office window, toward the Newark streets. I've traveled for more than 3 decades, toward the life I've built by working every day without ever missing. I'm more prepared than I thought, son. Tomorrow a new stage begins. I don't know if everything will turn out well, but I know I'm no longer the same man who 6 months ago stayed quiet when they called him an old fool. Now I'm someone who learned that experience isn't just a matter of years, but of knowing when and how to use it.